Now, if you're looking to hit that wildcard button over the international break, don't worry, I've got you covered with the ultimate guide in today's video. Now, before we dive into the team and of course into today's video, I just want to say that if you do enjoy any of the content that you see on the channel, please be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as we are trying to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and it is only possible with your guys' help. Right, let's take a look at some data from 11FI. I do feel this is a really useful tool to obviously be looking at where we should be looking in terms of targeting defenses, and of course in terms of where we should be looking to target attacks as well. As we can see here, I don't really think it's any surprise to see kind of the three best defenses so far in the league for XG conceded being at the top of this table. Manchester City, Arsenal and Liverpool all leading the way. Liverpool do have a difficult set of fixtures in the next two and have seen a decrease in terms of their percentage chance of clean sheets. However, matchday 10, 11 and 12, so maybe if you do have Trent Alexander-Arnold or are potentially thinking about including him on the wildcard, still could be worth some consideration. Despite City continually there we go, conceding very sloppy goals, they still are fancied to do quite well over this period. I do think the impact of Rodri will see a decrease in clean sheets. However, they just can't concede silly goals every single week. Fulham, interesting though, did manage to outscore them on XG in that game. They also managed to lose the game in terms of XG in the game before as well against Newcastle. So maybe this Rodri injury is having a big impact defensively than maybe we first thought. Arsenal as well, maybe it could be worth keeping some of those Arsenal defenders in the team, maybe the likes of Gabriel and Raya. I know over this past period we've been expecting clean sheets, hasn't really worked out that way, but still some pretty decent clean sheet percentage odds for the next few weeks. Brentford, despite match day 8, a difficult fixture, post that they have a great set of clean sheet potentials coming up. Same go with Everton, Spurs and Manchester United. Fulham as well, back on the menu. They've got some decent fixtures after Villa at home. Again, maybe the likes of Robinson could still be in your team on this upcoming wildcard. Moving on to projected goals, again coming from 11FI. Feel free to go and check out their amazing website in the description. We are seeing Manchester City being one of the best teams for those projected goals over the next few weeks as well. No real surprise there, to be honest. You know, there's some absolutely stellar fixtures coming up for those match day 9 one as well. If you are potentially thinking about using that triple captain chip on, of course, Erling Haaland, then that potentially could be one of the weeks that you go and do it. Liverpool, despite some difficult on paper fixtures, still fancy to do quite well, bar match day 9, obviously, where they do face off against Arsenal. Outside of that, they are really fancied to do quite well, so maybe it could be worth potentially keeping our eyes close on Mohamed Salah over this period. Spurs have got a great set of fixtures. I know despite the difficult result today, a 3-2 loss, they still look very good attackingly. The likes of Dominic Solanke, Maddison, Brennan Johnson, all starting to enter our thought process as players to potentially go and pick up. Manchester United, I've always spoke about this big fixture swing around match day 8. I think I'm still waiting to see a little bit more in terms of creativity from their players before including them on a wildcard draft. Maybe if Eric gets sacked over the international break, that could be the period that we start to jump on them. Chelsea's kind of a mixed bag, 8 and 11. Definitely some difficult fixtures for projected goals and for the likes of Cole Palmer. But outside of that, some fixtures where they could really explode and potentially offer decent captaincy material as well. In terms of teams we probably want to be avoiding, you know, Wolves, Southampton, Ipswich, they're not really teams we want to be kind of fancying on the wild card. Same goes with, you know, Crystal Palace as well. There is a big drop-off, so we're not going to have Eze on this team. Finishing up, let's look at predicted points for the next 5 game weeks. Again, another very useful tool for kind of maybe identifying players you want to be kind of selecting in terms of your wild card. Haaland, obviously going to be top. I don't think there's any surprise there with the strong set of fixtures coming up for Manchester City. I think the captaincy potential for the next 3 game weeks to 4 game weeks as well does lead him to be the best captain option in the game. Salah as well, surprisingly, is still fancied to do quite well in terms of those projected points, so maybe we are being a little bit brash if we were to wildcard him out this week. I'm going to let you know now, the wildcard that I have built doesn't include him, but maybe if you did want to have some tweaks, you could very easily go and find a way to go and get him in. Palmer and Saka, pretty close between those two. Some other interesting assets, and Buemo for me feels like an absolute must on a game week 8 wildcard. Some Spurs boys starting to enter the fray as well. We saw with the 11FI projected goal data, Solanke and Maddison, definitely two interesting picks as well. Raul Jimenez could be a really, really valuable, maybe decent, cheap striker option as well. The Fulham fixtures actually aren't too bad. Aston Villa, Everton, Brentford, Palace, Wolves. Then they play Tottenham and Brighton back-to-back, but, you know, you could potentially bench him for the Tottenham game and play him at home against Brighton as well. And then down the bottom, Cunha as well, another player I would be keeping close eyes on. Wolves in general as well, around match day 9, match day 10, they do go on this big fixture kind of swing, and you do feel like if they have any chance of survival, then that will be the period that they should start picking up results. As well, they potentially could sack off Gary O'Neill and get a new manager bounce for those amazing fixtures. That really could be a recipe for success, so something to keep your mind on when you are wildcarding this week. That's enough about the data for teams and individual players. Let's go and look at this Game Week 8 wildcard draft I've built. Wasting no time, let's dive into my wildcard team for Game Week 8. We're going to start off with our goalkeepers first. It is going to be David Raya and it is going to be Fabianski. I think, you know, despite Arsenal not keeping some clean sheets, Raya is still a pretty steady goalkeeper option to be going for. As we can see with the 11FI data as well, the clean sheet odds are still pretty decent despite a dip in fixtures after this Bournemouth game. And you do feel like in those more difficult games as well, he could potentially go and pick up maybe some save points, maybe start to get himself back into the bonus conversation as well, with obviously goalkeepers doing quite well for passing, which is something that Arsenal do, saves on top of that, and if he can keep a clean sheet, definitely starts to enter himself in terms of those bonus points as well. So I think that's a smart pick in terms of goalkeepers. Alternatives probably would be somebody like Flecken, maybe the Wolves goalkeeper if you really wanted to go down that route, but yeah, I think goalkeepers this year, it is a little bit dicey. Moving into the back line, we're going to start off first with Rico Lewis. I think for the price point he is at 4.7 million at the time of recording, he is an absolute stellar pickup, getting into historically one of the best defences in the league over the past few years, with a good set of fixtures coming up for Manchester City as well. Wolves, Southampton, Bournemouth, Brighton, Tottenham. It's a great next five for me personally. I think as well, if you watch Rico Lewis and see the positions that he does occupy, then for me he looks like an absolute gem, finding the spaces around the edge of the box, kind of very similar to what we've seen from Gavardio last season. I do feel across these good set of fixtures, if City manage to keep a clean sheet and he picks up some attacking returns, he could go and get himself a mega haul this season. Moving on to our next defender, it is going to be Diego Dalot, one of the highest scoring defenders currently in the game. This is for a United side who haven't had the best start to the season. However, there is a pretty ridiculous fixture run coming up. We saw with the 11FI data as well, decent clean sheet percentage chances, but Brentford, West Ham, Chelsea, Leicester, Ipswich and Everton as the next run. Also, again, another bonus point magnet, very similar to Raya because he does the things that the bonus point system really likes this season. So could be a decent way into there. However, United's XG conceded so far this season has left things to be a little bit more desired, and they've probably been a little bit fortunate to keep as many clean sheets as they have done. So maybe just do bear that in mind. But it is a strong fixture run. The potential of a new manager bounce as well could be on the card. So I think Dalot could be a decent pickup. Next up is going to be Aina. I think this Forest run for the next three at least is pretty decent. Crystal Palace, Leicester, West Ham. Then they've got Newcastle, but then they've got Arsenal, not the greatest, but Ipswich in Game Week 13. So maybe if you could find somebody to bench him for in those Game Week 11 and Game Week 12 fixtures, then you definitely could have your hands a pretty decent defender, playing for one of the sides that currently is sat third for XG conceded in the Premier League as well. So you're buying into a decent defence. With 10 men on the pitch today, they still managed to keep it sort of together, but with 11 men, they were a lot more comfortable and restricted Chelsea to very, very few opportunities. In terms of our two bench defenders, it is going to be Van der Berg and it is going to be Nori. Van der Berg for 4 million with a decent set of Brentford fixtures coming up. Again, we saw with the 11FI data really, really good clean sheet percentage chances. At Nori, around Game Week 10, Wolves go on this absolutely ridiculous run. And so far, his underlying data has been stupendous and definitely a player I would be considering picking up ahead of that run. Currently coming in at 4.4 million. So I think if you were on a wild card, I'd have him, bench him for probably at least this week. They've got Brighton next week. Could definitely play him in that one. After that, though, he's probably not going to leave your team for a couple game weeks because his fixture run, like I said, is very, very tasty indeed. Moving on into our midfielders, we're going to first off start off with Brian Mbeumo. Again, one of the most consistent players we've seen so far this season. 6 goals from him. I don't think you really need any convincing. If you've not already got this lad, what are you doing? Brentford's fixtures do continue good up until around game week 13. He's on penalties, is the talisman for this Brentford side, an absolute must in everybody's books. Next up is going to be Cole Palmer, followed up his 25-point haul with just 6 today. However, the fixtures for the next few are a little bit dicey. Liverpool away is probably not going to be an easy fixture. Newcastle and United after that, though, he definitely could get something out of those. Arsenal then, again, not great. But game week 12 is where it really gets interesting for Cole Palmer. Leicester, Villa and Southampton. That is where I definitely would want Cole Palmer and Chelsea assets along that period. So maybe getting in on early. Maybe, obviously, I think there's going to be a few price rises for him over the international break. And maybe building a little bit of value within your team as well on the wildcard could be the sensible decision. Next up is going to be Adama Traore. Now, interestingly, he's so far got 3 attacking returns this season. His underlying data or his expected goal involvement as well has been fantastic, should I say. 3.6 for him. He's really, really starting to kind of find his feet within this Fulham side. And again, they go on a pretty nice run here. Villa at home. Again, I think Villa have looked a little bit leggy in the last 2, so definitely for me, very playable. Everton, Brentford, Palace, Wolves after that, though. That's a great set of fixtures, and Fulham have done really, really well in terms of, you know, not only their XG conceded, but also their XG for as well. So I think for 5.1 million could be a steal to go and get on the wild card. Next up is going to be Bukayo Saka off the back of his 16-point haul. Bournemouth up next, great. Liverpool, then it's Newcastle and Chelsea away. Again, there probably is this period here where a lot of the premiums don't really have amazing fixtures, and I would be maybe tempted to look at somebody like Phil Foden ahead of this Manchester City run, but he did look a little bit absent from the game at the weekend. Maybe with it just being his first start in the Premier League, it's going to take him a little bit more time to get grounded and get himself back to where he was a few months ago. But maybe you go Saka. Maybe if Foden looks decent, you can take him out ahead of the more difficult fixtures. But for now, I'm going to keep Bukayo Saka. On the bench is going to be, of course, Morgan Rogers. I think for the price point you're paying for him now, if you've not already had him or you've already got him, you might as well keep him in there because you're just probably going to rotate him around the difficult fixtures and play him when you need to. He's still continuing to see decent minutes, still continuing to play for a very attacking side in Aston Villa, a side who will be at the top of the table. And I think for me, he is acting like a 6.5 million player. 20 points in the last 3 games. I don't think you can complain at that for £5.3 million. Let's finish up. Let's look at our strikers. We're going to first off start off with Dominic Solanke. He's been super frustrating to own, but the fixtures are there, and I am a fixture man. Ipswich, Fulham, Southampton, West Ham, Brentford as the next 5 fixtures. I think maybe if he blanks after the Southampton game, I would be tempted to kind of just cut my losses and get rid of him. He is a penalty taker and very easily, or maybe should have had a penalty this weekend, and if he definitely had done that, I feel he would have been on a lot more people's radars. Ipswich next. They seem to be getting battered pillar to post. They've conceded that they've currently got the worst XG conceded so far in the league, so definitely a side I think we need to be targeting this season. Everton hopefully should be looking at that as 3 points, and hopefully Dominic Calvert-Lewin can be involved in the goals. Spurs, as we saw with the projected goal numbers from 11FI, have a decent set coming up over the next few, and I really want to take advantage of West Ham, Palace, Villa and Ipswich for them, and Dominic Solanke for me is probably going to be the best way. You've also got some cheap midfield options that you could also go for. Maybe if you drop the striker down to maybe like a Strand Larson and upgraded Rodgers to maybe or Adama to maybe Brennan Johnson, that could also be an option. You've also, of course, got James Maddison looking pretty decent, but I don't kind of want to stack out this midfield too much when we've got some pretty decent forward options to go for as well. And then finally, it is going to be Erling Haaland. Again, he's probably top for projected points for this game week against Wolves. They've conceded so far the most goals in the Premier League as well. That for me seems like a game where I do want Erling Haaland. However, it does look like he is potentially struggling without KDB and Rodri being in the side. But, you know, KDB hopefully could be back post-international break for this good City fixture run of Wolves, Southampton, Bournemouth, Brighton, and hopefully, you know, he could get back to the magic we saw earlier in the season from him. But that is going to be the Game Week 8 wildcard team. Let me know what you think of it down in the description, in the comments, sorry. Any questions you do have, get them in the comments as well. But thank you very much for watching today, ladies and gentlemen, and good luck in Game Week 8.